Basically the same as last year, except we do have one new module we're going to introduce, so there'll be a lot of repeat material for you guys. So this is the agenda. Start out with some objectives and just then kick into the first module, which I'll cover, which is course design. It's a lot of the DVOA course setting guidelines in slide format. We have a short exercise after that, and then we'll do module 2. Dean will present that. That's the Condes software overview. He'll walk you through that and show you how to use Condes, which is a great tool for course setting. I mean, in the old days we used to use tracing paper and things, and this is so much better, so much easier to use. Then we have another short exercise, and Clem will take us through the course setting process, and then the new module we'll have at the end is just some of the discipline-specific info, sprint, middle, long courses if you want to try to set some of those. And then we'll wrap up with questions, probably finish up around 1:15. So the objectives for the course are to review the technical standards for courses, provide instruction on the fundamental concepts of good course design, introduce participants to Condes software and let you get a chance to use it and play around with it during the course, provide an overview of the steps in course setting that are necessary to ensure a good outcome, and enable participants to develop skills and encourage them to volunteer as course setters for local club events. I think after last year's clinic we did have a few new course setters that stepped up and did courses. So one of the things, if you are interested after the course is finished and want to set courses, you know, just talk to Clem, Vadim, or I, and we'd be glad to set you up with an experienced course setter, just kind of help you out along the way and mentor you along. That's usually the best way if you're starting out fresh, is to work with an experienced course setter so that they can kind of show you the ropes. I don't know if you want to advance the slides, Clem. Boy. Okay, so this is the first module. There are, like I said, a lot of the information presented in this module is contained in the DVOA course setting guidelines, which are available on the DVOA website, and the link is there. Did all of you get the copies of the course material on your computer and were able to download it? Except the people with Macs, I guess. If not,
don't worry about us.
And so you can refer to that for future information. Okay, for local events, traditionally what we've done is what's called classic length courses, and there are specific winning times and things that we try to shoot for, and really the winning time is the governing thing that you want to use for course setting. If you try to use length, what you'll find is depending upon the terrain, the winning times will vary. If it's a real steep, rocky area, the pace for those courses is going to be much slower than if it's a flat, open area. And so you want to try to shoot for the target winning times. And along with that, we have some typical lengths for the different courses shown there. That comes out of the OUSA rules. You'll see like orange, 4.5 to 7 is what's in the rules. That's a little on the high side for orange. We would very rarely see a 7-kilometer orange course. Usually they're maybe 4 to 5 kilometers, something like that. The other courses I think that's pretty typical. Red, 6 to 10. The 10 is a little on the high side, but if it was a really fast area, maybe like Collier's Mills or something like that, flat and open, that might be appropriate to put a 9, 10-kilometer red course, but that's toward the high side. And here, this was the more typical lengths I put for local events. And as far as the technical difficulty, you want to have a good gradation of difficulty. White should be, for beginners, all on trail, very easy navigation. Yellow, you start getting people into the woods a little bit. Orange is medium difficulty, which to me is always the toughest course to set because you're trying to strike a fine balance between the beginner stuff and the advanced. And it's easy to make orange too hard or too easy. And then the brown, green, and red and blue, the advanced courses, those are all supposed to be the same technical difficulty level. They should all be hard. The difference is in the length. And a note around blue. For local events, we don't always offer blue courses. Sometimes the terrain or the park won't really allow for it easily. You'd have to do a lot of crossing over, maybe a map exchange if you don't have a lot of terrain to work with. But it is nice to offer blue if you can. It's a little extra work, but the blue runners appreciate it.
So Tom, any height gain guidelines at all?
Just for climb?
Yeah.
Yes, we'll get into that. It's 4% max is usually what we try to shoot for.
Okay.
And we'll talk about how you calculate that. Okay, so how do we design courses to match the winning time targets? The easiest thing to do on existing maps is you go to the DVOA results page and you look at the previous events that were run on that map. And it'll break down and show you the winning times for each course, and then you can take an average of those, and it'll also show you the length of the courses in kilometers. So you know the winning time, you know the length, you can divide winning time divided by length to get a time per kilometer for what the winning times historically have been. And then given the winning time target, you can multiply that out and come up with the target length for the course. So that's the easiest thing to do. And I think I may have another slide on that to show you how we typically do that. If it's new terrain, you don't have previous results to rely on. So what I typically do there is try to find a map that's closest to that type of terrain, an existing DVOA map, and I go and I look at the winning time data for that map, and then I use that as a surrogate for the new terrain and go through the same procedure. Another way you can gauge winning times is if you do a preliminary course design and then go out and run it in the woods. You can do a test run to come up with winning time that way. Now, the tricky thing with that is, a lot of us are not as fast as the fastest runners, and so if you test run a course and come up with your time on the course, then you have to factor to figure out what the winning runner would actually be able to do the course in. So we usually don't go to this level for local events. Usually we use the existing data, but for A events, test running is very helpful. Okay, so this is an example of how I typically calculate target lengths. So this was for an event I was doing at Warwick several years back, and I looked at the 5 previous events at Warwick and calculated for each course what the average length for those events was and the average winning time. So then you just divide the time divided by the length in kilometers to get a minutes per kilometer. So that's your winning pace for each course. And then we have our target winning time in minutes. So if you take the target winning time, divide by the average winning time, so this is in minutes, this is in minutes per kilometer, you'll get the target length in kilometers. And these are approximate. You want to probably get close to that. This is not going to work. You're not going to get the exact times right every time, but at least it'll get you in the right ballpark. And you can use a little judgment too. If your course looks like it has a lot of climb and maybe these courses didn't, then you might want to adjust it up or down, things like that. But that's the approach I usually use. Okay, start location. This is one of the first things you have to do when you're designing courses. And usually what dictates the start is the white and yellow course design, because you need to be near strong linear features like trails and streams and things like that in order to route the white and yellow courses. So you look for an area that would support white and yellow, and then you pick your start accordingly. Usually we like to have short walks to the start, generally less than a kilometer. Sometimes you have to go a little bit longer, depending on where the parking and things is and how that will fit with the course design. One thing you can do is if you're finding you have too much climb on your courses, you can put in a walk to the start and have the start elevated so that people are running downhill out of the start, or reduces the climb on the course. So that's something that's done, especially at A events. At places like West Point and things, they'll climb you up to the top of the mountain to start because The courses tend to have a lot of climb there. The start, ideally you want to configure it. We don't always do this at local events, but certainly for A events. When a runner is leaving the start, you don't want the people that are starting behind them to be able to see which direction they're going out of the start, because that kind of tips people off to what the first leg, could be. And so you try to, that's why we do the call-ups at A events where you have 3 lines, and usually from those first 2 lines you can't see the final line. And that's to prevent people that haven't started yet from seeing the runners at the start. It's a little harder to do for local events where we really only have the 1 start line. And sometimes you'll see events have separate starts for white and yellow. We like to avoid that if possible, because you like to have the white and yellow people in with everybody else. It kind of treats them as second-class citizens if you have a second start area for them sometimes. But there's times when you just can't get around it. At NAOC, for example, on the middle courses, we had to do a separate start area for white and yellow, and that was the best we could do. But it's ideally you want to have them all together. Finish. It's good to have the finish close to the parking and the event center. So given a choice, it's better to have the finish close to the parking and things than the start, because when people finish, they want to get in their car or get into dry clothes and things like that. So as far as spectating opportunities, it's good to try to incorporate some around the finish. You certainly, the last control and the run-in, it's good to try to create a little drama with that and have a good spectator area where people can watch others finishing. You can also have legs which crisscross through the start-finish area where people can kind of watch as people run their courses. Another general thing to watch for on finish is you want to have a nice clean footing route to the finish from the last control. The last thing you want to do is have somebody injure themselves on the course as they're trying to sprint to the finish because there's a bunch of roots and rocks or something in the way. So we typically try to keep that as a fast run-in. Okay, the white course. The white course is for beginners, so you really can't make it too easy. It should not require use of compass. What you want the white people to do is concentrate on reading the map. Sometimes new people come out and they're all hung up on taking bearings and trying to learn how to use the compass, and when they focus on the compass, invariably they end up making mistakes and they get frustrated. So you really want to make it easy for them to navigate just by reading the map. Every leg has to be along strong linear features. Usually that's trails, roads, edges of fields. The navigation should be all on trail. You don't need to get them into the woods off the trail at all. The leg lengths on white are usually less than 400 meters per leg. So if you're finding you got a 600-700 meter leg on white, you might want to rethink that. Choose obvious features for control sites, things like trail junctions, stream junctions, those type things. Stone walls are good for white courses. And you want to use the control location to help guide the participant to the next control. So if you have a case maybe where there's 2 trail junctions in a row, you might want to put the control at the first junction so that they don't make the mistake and take the wrong trail. Usually you try to locate the controls at decision points. And you want to look for a variety of features. Sometimes this is tough to do on white because you get into a situation where every control is a trail junction or trail intersection. So if you can find features that are right along the trail to use instead of having all trail junctions, that's good. It makes it more interesting and it introduces them to some additional features. You want to avoid vague or dense areas. If the map is weak in a certain area, try to keep the white people out of there because it'll be very frustrating for them if the map is not matching up to reality and they have to try to sort that out. If you do have to send people into the woods off the trail, you'll want to hang streamers there. And this is again something we had to do at NAOC because there weren't enough trails for us to route a good loop for white. So you can use a short streamer leg through the woods, but you want to tell people ahead of time. and you'll want to note that on the control description. There's a way of doing that. As far as route choice on white, it's really not necessary to have route choice, and especially probably at the beginning of the course you really probably don't want route choice because people will get confused. But if you do put some route choice in, usually it's better to have it towards the second half of the course and make it very simple. You don't want super complicated route choices on white. This is an example of this is one of Clem's white courses at Ridley. So here's the start. You can see right out of the start they're just following a trail. And they get down here, the trail splits, and that's kind of a decision point. So put a control there, come up here, another decision point where there's a trail there, and then work your way around. This area is getting a little bit complicated for white, but again, that was the second half of the course. And, it's a nice run in here, it's open field, and close to the parking and everything. So. White course. Okay, yellow. This is for advanced beginner. So usually when people have gone out on yellow, they will have done a white course before. Sometimes people start out on yellow. So it should be a little more challenging than white, but still only advanced beginner difficulty. It also should not really require use of a compass. You should be able to do a yellow course by map reading. The difference between white and yellow is that you want to get people in the woods on a yellow course, but there always has to be a safe trail route from one control to another, or some linear handrail to follow from one control to another. So a lot of times what you'll see on yellow courses is there might be an option if you're going from one point to another to cut through the woods instead of going around on a trail. But at least you give participants the option of taking the trail. But it would probably be faster to go through the woods. So you don't want to send them, if you're getting them off trail, through dense vegetation or really rough areas or anything. Keep it pretty safe. Leg lengths can be a little bit longer than white, usually less than 600 meters. Still want to use obvious features for control sites. And if the control is not right on the linear feature or trail or things, you want to have a good catching feature just beyond it so that they don't go too far. And we like to place the controls on or near large collecting features. Again, avoid vague or dense areas. You want to pick user-friendly terrain for yellow. There's a tendency in local events especially to try to use a lot of the same controls on white and yellow, just make the yellow a little bit longer. But that's really not a good way of approaching yellow because it is a different technical difficulty than white. And so if you're using the same controls as white, you probably are setting the yellow course too easy. It's okay to have some shared controls, but you don't want to just take the white course and add another small loop to it because white is different technically than yellow. This is a yellow example. This was Nate's courses from French Creek East a couple years ago. So now here, this first control, it's really a white level control, and that's okay on yellow. You get people confident out of the start. This one you can see the feature is a platform. It's not right on the trail like a white control would be, but there is the trail right beyond it as the catching feature. And this is French Creek, so it's kind of hard to get people into the woods a lot at French Creek, but people are going to be basically following the trails from all of this probably. But once you get from 3 to 4, this would be a very typical yellow leg. I think this is it's a little hard to see, a knoll or depression maybe, just off the trail. And they would have the option of taking the trail from 3 to 4, or they could cut through the woods. So that's a very classic type yellow leg. Up here, instead of using all trails, he's taking them and relying on the stream as a linear handrail. So that's also pretty typical on yellow, is one good way of getting people in the woods but still having a safe handrail is to allow them to follow a stream for the length of the leg. Then they get back on the trail here. Another area where they could cut through if they wanted, and then to the finish. Orange, again, this is for me always the toughest course to set. I probably tend to make my oranges too tough. But it is supposed to be intermediate level difficulty. Here is where people should start using a compass, but you don't want to have them taking really detailed bearings. They should probably be using the compass just for general guidance, and even then, not on every leg. It should get people mostly into the woods. You want to mix up the leg lengths with short and longer legs, give people variety. Choose fairly prominent features for control sites, or have a very strong attack point nearby, like a really large cliff, stream junction, things like that. And similar to yellow, there should be a catching feature after each control, and that would be within 50 to 100 meters of the control. That could be a trail, a road, a stream, something like that behind the control, so that if they go too far, they're going to know it and not just keep wandering in the woods. You want to try to get variety into the course, different terrain types, and feature different navigational techniques. And here's where also you want to start getting more route choice into the courses. This is another one of Nate's from the same event back at French Creek. So here you can see this first control is the end of a stream or a spring, and there is a trail route, but in this case you would expect most people to probably go straight, and there's the trail just beyond it, so that catching feature is very close to the control. This is a platform, there's a stream beyond that is a catching feature. Over here the feature is looks like a stream bend probably. It's right on basically the catching feature, so you really don't need another catching feature behind it. Up here is a hilltop. You'll see once you get into orange too, a lot of the control sites you start focusing on contour type features like re-entrance, knolls, spurs. You'll see those a lot on orange courses. On white and yellow, you probably don't want to rely too much on contour type features for control sites, because those people are going to have a tough time reading contours. But once you get up to orange, they should really start being able to read contours. So I think here's another case where you have a trail route that people would tend to go straight there. It's a boulder or something with the trail right beyond it. So power line here right beyond that one. So the catching feature piece is really a key thing to keep in mind for orange. Okay, then we get into brown, green, red, and blue, and we're lumping all these together because really from a technical difficulty standpoint they should all be the same. The difference is in the length, and I mean the added length tends to make the blue course and red courses tougher than the brown and green, but as far as the control sites you're using for those courses, they should all be similar level of difficulty. Here you want to have frequent use of compass. It's okay to set legs that require precise compass bearings. It should be primarily off trail, especially some of our local parks. It's a challenge sometimes to find controls that are technical enough for these advanced courses because there's such a dense trail network and things, so you have to do the best you can with that. The courses should offer a constant mental challenge. You want variety again, mix up your leg lengths. Don't set a course where all the leg lengths are 500 meters. You want some short ones, some long ones. And on these courses, another thing that's really good is to set one or two ultra long legs. And we'll get into that a little bit more, is how you design long legs. For these courses, it's really a critical feature, and one that I think at a lot of local events, people don't do enough of that. They'll tend to set similar leg lengths all through the course, and that's really not ideal. You want one or two really long route choice legs, and usually you start with that when you're designing the course and then build the rest of the course around it to feature those long legs. As far as what features you use for control sites, they should be small point features generally. You don't want them located too close to major attack points or catching collecting features, and point versus linear features to make it more difficult. So things like a boulder as opposed to a stream junction. You want to again have varied terrain and call upon as wide a variety of navigational techniques as you can. Again, try to work as much route choice in as possible. The long legs especially need to have a lot of route choice, but even shorter legs it's good to try to work in route choice if you can. On the long legs you don't want to set them so there's just like a right-left trail route. You don't want people running along the trail for 1.5 kilometers if possible. Try to make them think and navigate as they're running. For brown and green, one thing you have to watch out for here is these are older orienteers, and so in a lot of cases their eyesight is not what it once was, and you want to avoid putting controls in areas of the map that have a lot of fine detail because they're going to have a tough time reading the map. It all looks like a blur to them. Another factor on those courses is you want to try to keep the climb a little shorter, lower on those if possible.